to this latest edition of What's Your Purpose, the podcast where we go on the road to a place where our guest has special memories. Today, I'm joined by Mary Parsons, who's the Partnerships and Regeneration Director for Lovell. Mary, we're sat here in a library in the middle of Birmingham, or just on the outskirts of Birmingham, Shard End Library.
Yes.
Why have you brought us here?
Its predecessor library, which was just up the road and around the corner, was actually the place where I had my first Saturday job at the age of 15. Thinking back about, where I've come from in life, there was an awful lot of things kind of came to a head in life around that time, and it felt a little bit like I was rooted here in this place. And a lot of things that have happened since, I can point back to Shard End Library and think, yeah, you helped me with that.
Wow, so why is it so special?
I think the timing of it was in a very difficult period in life. So just going into my final year at school to do O-levels as was then, and literally the week that term was starting, my mum died suddenly. Right. And so you can imagine everything in life just sort of totally went up in the air at that point. The librarian had asked the head teacher to recommend someone to join as a Saturday assistant, and he thought I'd love it. He said, I think it'd be really good for you to do it. Despite everything, I think this would be really good. And my dad was not happy with it, and I dug my heels in. And really, I think it was the making of me, because it became so many different things. It wasn't just, my first Saturday job, that little bit of money in my pocket. It gave me headspace. Yeah. It took me out of what was a pretty grim period of life. It gave me family, in a sense. I was kind of adopted by the other women that worked there. But it gave me, I suppose, a kind of sanctuary, which a lot of people that use libraries use them for that way. It's that sense of not feeling alone, of just having people around when you can't talk, when you are in that quiet space. But I got to know a huge amount of people. And it was also escapism, both in terms of, I could learn new recipes, I could learn new crafts, I could read about foreign countries, I could look at the history of politics, and I read anything. It gave me a sense of the importance of community and the importance of place not just being a lot of houses. It's how people come together in a place. And although it was never part of a big career plan or pathway of that, it kind of led to a lot of other things, where I went next in education, what I'm really passionate about, and how I ended up doing what I do.
I think it's, obviously, Mary, I'm really sorry to hear that about your mum at 15, and I think for anyone at that age, losing a parent, and especially so suddenly, could have gone two ways. Do you ever look back and go, there for the grace of Shard End Library, go I, because had I not had that experience, I could have gone another way?
Oh, God, yeah. I hovered over the self-destruct button in so many ways for a good few years afterwards. I'd say probably up until when actually my eldest daughter was born. Right. And again, not something that was planned in life, but ended up being the best thing that could have ever happened to me. But I think I'd always had really drilled, we all had in the family, about if you want to do something, if you want to go somewhere, if you want to be someone, you've got to work for it, because no one's ever going to give it you, and I think it was that work ethic. I think perversely I kind of had this thing about, well, I am not going to stop now because I am going to make her proud. I'm going to get the results. I'm going to go to university, everything we talked about. But I think people cope with things in different ways. And as you say, it could have easily gone either way, to be honest, for a good period of time.
I always remember, Mary, the first meeting I had with you and the consultants in London. So there I was, hadn't seen you for probably about 7 or 8 years, and we're in this room. And I was just not taken aback, because this is you. Your technical expertise around regeneration, I think, is second to none. But it's not just that, it's your approach, which is a human approach. So Gilson Park Estate, as we know, is a very, very significant project in the southeast of England, which was going to disrupt many people's lives to create something better for the future. And the empathy that you had approaching that project, it stuck with me. And I'm just wondering about if ever you think of yourself as someone who's empathetic.
It's interesting you say about, sort of technical ability in that, because I don't have technical training. Well, I'm not sure many people do in Regen, but, I'm not a quantity surveyor, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect. But what I think I have always been able to do is pull information and bring it together and look at what it means, forming opinions and judgment and analysis. And it's a little bit like my little ecosystem in my library had all of these expertise written down from every area of knowledge you could want. In Regen, I've been privileged to work with the best people that I just learn and learn. And I think it is that bit about never wanting to stop learning and understanding. But I think it's interesting that if you talk to a lot of people in both housing and construction, they'll talk about falling into it as a career. No one really sits there and think, I want to go into housing. Hopefully we can change that, and we're doing our best to do that. But I think, as you said at the start, it's been about your values and being value driven, but it's understanding the impact on people, on what we do. And I think if you look across the housing sector, particularly in the affordable housing sector, people with similar stories, I'm not telling my tale to have the backstory of how tragic it was and coming out of adversity and that. There are so many people in the sector that have a similar upbringing to mine, have overcome challenges in life. And I think because you've gone through it, you want to help other people and get them to see, look guys, we can get through this. But I also think it's about wanting to improve the quality of life for people. And ultimately, that's what regeneration should do. It isn't about just replacing a poor building with a better building. Even with the library, I thought the other library was great, but it was at the back of the shops and it had like flats above it, and it was, you had to be a bit careful after dark in the winter. This new building, which I think is fantastic, was a symbol of regeneration, and it was putting community and learning and people as a statement of intent, and then built houses as well. And I think it kind of becomes ingrained. And when I joined Places for People, I do remember sitting in one of the offices, and it was open plan, and some of the tenants had complained, and I heard someone saying, who do they think they are? They should be bloody grateful they've got a roof over their heads. And I thought that was appalling. What we're doing every day impacts on people's lives. When they get up in the morning, when they're getting their kids ready for school, they might be living in a construction site, or they might be worried that their home's going to be demolished and they don't know when it's going to be. And actually, that bit about telling stories, it's giving people the faith that there is a tomorrow. Stick with us, that tomorrow is going to be better than today.
And I've seen that in action, Mary, and one thing that's jumping out at me from you there is about time. You give people time. You allow that time to think, to consider, to plan. Going back to Harlow again, which is a real relevant experience, the Heart for Harlow Awards. You're laughing. Every October, Place for People used to sponsor, and Mary would stand on stage, and you've got the room full of everyone who has contributed to the future of Harlow in that room, from the entrepreneurs through to the charities, to the public servants. And I just don't think, there are many practitioners who have that skill to be able to walk into a room full of community on an annual basis and be mobbed. The scheme itself was up to 16,000 homes in Greenbelt and north of Harlow, and a lot of controversy.
I think a lot of it is trust. I don't think communities feel that they're listened to. I don't think they feel that they're told the full story, whether that's true or not. Yeah. I don't think they'll ever trust private sector, but equally they have no faith in the public sector. And I think you have to tell the truth. They might not like to hear it sometimes. And I remember one of the first meetings, because on that one there was a lot of historic and very ingrained anti-development sentiment, which was fully understandable. And I remember meeting with them, and at the start of the meeting it's like, well, should we maybe manage expectations? Because I don't think, at the end of this meeting, I'll have persuaded you that 10,000 homes where you live is a good idea. But equally, I'm highly unlikely to go back to my colleagues on the board and tell them, look, forget it, we shouldn't do this, because I do believe it was the right thing to do. Explaining the benefits of regen, it can't be that, well, you lot are going to take a lot of pain because this lot are going to have something better as a result. You've got to show that you understand that impact on their quality of life, that you will do your best to manage that, and that there will be some positives for them. But for a lot of those people that were really directly impacted, they won't see a positive. And it is probably the hardest bit of the job to think that actually, the quality of life that they've invested in, that they've brought their family up in, you are going to impact. So it's a debate then about the greater good. But I think that was very much about housing growth. I think where it's really interesting is within this kind of community that we've got in Shard End that's clearly, as I've driven around, I've not been here for a good while, and a lot of it has been demolished and new homes built. But other parts of Birmingham, but any city, any town across the country, the same debates are happening. And it is the fear of change.
Yeah.
We would all feel that. Why are we then surprised if people oppose something because they don't understand it? And we don't explain it, we don't take the time, and we certainly don't explain it in a way, going back to my library days, you describe it as fluent human.
Yeah.
But even plain English would be good. Yeah. We put highly technical information, and developers, we do tend to come into an area as if we're the experts, we've got the answers, this is going to be great. And actually, you need to listen.
Yeah.
You need to understand it. You need to look at it through their eyes. And that will bring empathy, because you'll suddenly understand, you might be looking at the optimum construction phase in which will knock, 6 months off the programme. But you could be taking away something the community values, or you could be stopping a route that they use or a facility that they need, just because it's more convenient and cheaper for us. And we worked together a year or so ago, talking to communities, coincidentally in Birmingham. And there was one comment there that I think, and I would say it's almost haunted me, which was another area of the city going through regen, where one of the residents, who was so articulate and so passionate, who fully accepted, and I know the area because I lived there as well, it needs regeneration. They need better homes, they need more homes, they just don't think it's the right solution.
Yeah. And
they're worried that they won't have a place in their community anymore. And she described it, when we asked them to put it on the post-it notes, as at best a necessary evil. I'd hate to think in my career that I could ever be described as at best a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And you just think, we've got to work differently. We've got to bring people with us.
And here you are, you find yourself now at Lovell, National Regeneration and Housing. And I think what I know of Lovell and getting to know of Lovell is the fact that you found a good home. Yeah. I think you found a very good home, Mary. And I think why? Because I think their values are intrinsic within the organisation. And as Partnerships Director, what challenges are you finding now out there?
It wasn't a planned move to Lovell. It was a planned transition in my life, which then COVID kind of got in the way a little bit. And then when I had the chance to meet Steve, Lovell's MD, I really felt actually there is a job to do here, because they are private sector. They are 100% commercial. They are part of a huge PLC. Yeah. But actually they want to do the right thing. That is the overarching ethos of the business, and it is how we want to work. And I think they were on a journey that I hope that some of my experience of bigger development and bigger regen could add to them, because a lot of the time, if you're a house builder and you're building within a red line of a site, and it'll take a couple of years and maybe another year to sell out, you've only got that little period in that place's evolution where you can make a difference. And it will be about apprentices and things that you can control in that timescale. When we were starting to get attached to bigger things, you have to shift your thinking about whether we class it social value, which, as you know, I don't like as a phrase, but the impact, the legacy that we can have. And I always feel, you know, with some of the partnerships we've got now, they're 15, 20 years. With some of the regeneration programs, we're going to be in that community for a long time. So it is about putting down roots, as we did in Harlow, where we got to be part of the community, even though we didn't live there. And for me, you know, it's almost saying, right, if we've got 20 years, on the day we sign a contract, if there is a 5-year-old kid going into school, what can we do to improve their pathways in life? And number one, we can hopefully give them a better home, or even the chance of a home, which maybe can come back on where we are in housing in this country currently. But can we improve their mental and physical health? Can we create a kind of environment where they feel safe to walk to school or to go and play with their friends? So it's not car dependent, so the air quality is better. And then there's less chance of childhood obesity, so then they're less likely to be diabetic or have high blood pressure, so they're less likely to have a stroke, heart disease and dementia, so they're less likely to put a burden on the social care system in the future.
Wow.
Now, when you sign in a contract, you're not thinking about that, but if we could think of those formative years through that kid's school life, can we help them have a better quality of life, a safer and secure environment, link into their education and support them, but give them that opportunity to look at the kind of careers and opportunities that that investment can bring? Because I think that is one thing that really drives me. As I say, I fell into it, but I've had a good life because of housing and regeneration. If you'd have asked me, age 15, you know, your top 10 possible careers, it wouldn't have been anywhere close to it. I was really lucky to stumble into it. If we can help others see that range of opportunity, they've got some of the chances that I've been so bloody lucky to have in my life.
And that's really gracious of you to say that, Mary. You know, I've got a couple of questions to ask you around really about the sector. You talked about the sector earlier, about, you know, many people we work with in the sector have come into the housing sector because of past experience and the resilience they've shown. I mean, what's your view today about where it's going and you know, where do you think we're going to end up?
I think two things. First of all, you know, we are still in the worst housing crisis, and I have quoted someone that said it to me a couple of years ago: if you've been in a crisis for well over a decade, by definition, it's no longer a crisis, it's a status quo.
Yeah.
We have a completely dysfunctional housing market in this country. And I think there are the statistics with so many kids like me facing bumps in the road in life, but living in temporary accommodation. You know, when we think back to COVID and lockdown, I mean, we were bouncing off the walls of our house. We all had nice houses and nice gardens. Can you imagine in a former office block in the centre of Harlow trying to homeschool your kid, where you've got drug and alcohol users in the same building, you've got no outdoor space? With tackling the shortage, we cannot lose sight. It has to be about quality as well as quantity of homes. But I think the other thing that does feel different to when I was the 15-year-old kid is you just feel social mobility in this country has gone into reverse. All political parties, and probably I think the last leader that really took it seriously was Blair and then Brown as a successor. That thing about, you know, we have all of the Daily Mail debates about benefits and God knows what else, but sometimes people need a hand up. It's not about giving them a handout.
New deal.
Intervene early. Going back to my, you know, how can we make that pathway in life a bit easier? And then actually you think, if we'd have got that right, instead of austerity and shut-in libraries and things like that happened, then actually we wouldn't have the public sector finances in the state they are today. And you know, with the housing crisis, at the end of the day, if we hadn't lost over 2 million homes to right to buy, without the ability to replace, It's not been anti-aspiration or anything like that. We lost that amount of homes, and then we wonder why, Birmingham's temporary accommodation bill is now tens of millions a year and growing. We wonder why their adult social care and their children's services budgets. It's because that ability to be able to have that support to get you out of that place just doesn't feel like it's been there.
Mary, it's been fascinating. Love the conversation, and thanks so much for contributing. But this is about what's your purpose. And the final question I ask all of our guests is, what is your purpose, Mary?
That was a really difficult one, actually, particularly when you said to try and boil it down into words. I've touched on the social mobility bit, and linked to that, dignity for people at all stages of their life. You are defined. I think everyone is a product of the place that they're born, in one way or another, positive and negative. And, the home is the epicenter of that. It defines our chances in life. And so that drive for me in the career I've ended up in is, if I can give people the best home, then it gives them the best shot. It doesn't make life perfect, but it's one less thing. And then I suppose the other thing, as I've got older now, is about legacy. As I said, I have been so lucky to have ended up with the life and the career that I've had. You want others to see, give it a try, have the right support, have the freedom, I hope, and the flexibility that I was given by all of my bosses. And I haven't had that many, but I've been bloody lucky in every single one of them. And they've been very diverse characters, but they always gave me that room to grow, to still be curious, to still want to try something different, to still want to listen and learn. And I can route that curiosity and everything back to Chardin Library.
What a great place to end. Mary, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being today's guest.
Thanks, John.
With thanks to Birmingham City Council for allowing us to record this podcast in Chardin Library, and also to the staff of Chardin Library too. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.